How to become a top-class fullback.
So what are the demands for the position technically and tactically, and what should players be practicing? So in this video we will break down the different identities and profiles of a fullback. We'll have a look at some key statistics along with some sessions and very specific exercises. Now, to begin with, the position has always had a requirement for both sides of the ball.
Defending 1v1 and contributions going forward, but a larger focus traditionally was always on that defensive stability, so specifically stopping your direct winger from impacting the game. However, the position now sees a complete range of identities depending on the team, so these would include inverting inside, creating from deep, effectively being the winger in possession. Now, fullback identities, these are generally dictated by a player's physical, technical or tactical attributes. And while some fullbacks do have the full and complete range, most excel in one particular area. Now, to simplify things for players, we've broken down the profiles into three identities: the stopper, the flyer and the playmaker. Now, the stopper is your more traditional 1v1 defensive specialist who prevents the wingers from delivering, from progressing and covering the centre-backs. The flyer is the opposite, so your more attacking fullback who impacts the game through verticality and overlaps, underlaps, deliveries or dribbling 1v1. And then the playmaker is the more technical fullback, often that converted midfielder who dictates and controls the tempo of games from those deeper areas in the half spaces, or they play inverted. Now, in recent years, the increased expectancy of the winger to assist, to score and contribute to goals, like the traditional striker, has meant that fullbacks are often the players who are running onto the slide balls on the outside, receiving those switches of play high up, displaying that range of crossing techniques and the ability to go 1v1. And this is highlighted in the stat that over 20% of chances created in the Premier League in the last 3 seasons now come from fullbacks. So on this, let's break down the in-possession requirements. Now, regardless of profile, they have a huge responsibility, whether it be in the build-up, in the final third, in terms of passing frequency and range. For example, Kieran Trippier made 1,995 successful passes last season, with Andy Robertson making 1,803. Where a centre midfielder has to play through 360 degrees, whether it be the way that they press, they receive, 1v1, the way they pass through all angles of planes of motion. A fullback's pitches, these are relatively repetitive, and with the exception of inverted fullbacks, whether it be the receiving situations, the passing options with the ball, regardless of whether they're in their own third, the middle or the opponent's half, they often only have 180 degrees to play in. So here, the left back receives back to the touchline, and we know pressure can come from either in front, from the side, from behind or off the angle. And a fullback statistically will be most frequently pressed from the front or the angle. Sessions therefore have to replicate receiving back to the touchline off different angles and with frontal or angled pressure. So let's dive into some session examples then, working specifically with the fullback. So mark out 3 channels, and these are 20 yards in length and 6 yards wide, and a feeder will play balls into the fullback who receives back to the touchline. Now, the first part, manipulate your first touch so your hips and shoulders are open. By doing this, it opens up all the passing options as well as impacting the opponent's back line. Because if the touch goes backwards, then the back line will squeeze 5 to 10 yards, whereas if the fullback opens up with no pressure on the ball, then the back line have to drop with that threat of playing in behind. So your first touch literally impacts the whole picture. Then after your touch, manipulate the ball forward and step in at pace. And it's really important to keep changing the angle of the feeder to replicate different positions of centre-back and centre midfielders. Because a deeper pass from a centre-back, for example, demands a completely different body shape and hip position when receiving, as opposed to a square-on pass. After this, add in disguise, and this can come in either the first time fake pass, so selling the technique with the arms, shifting the angle late to then drive inside, or secondly, open up, show the winger the line as if you're going to play forward off a pass, they look to block the pass in the game and then drive inside, outplaying them. And then, after you've varied receiving and outplaying techniques, layer in some form of striking technique, so the technical foundation of a decision. For example, playing shorter passes into midfield, finding a striker, switching play. And for older players, mix up the delivery into them, because the game isn't always nice, easy ground passes, so practice various types of aerial receiving. Now, these exercises are great for different types of techniques, but for the final in possession picture, you have to move on to decision making, and you can only do this in an opposed scenario. So in groups of 3, work on the 3 different ways of outplaying pressure, through receiving, through 1v1 work, or through combinations. So quick overview. Firstly, receiving. If the opponent's closing at speed, then the first touch can either go on the outside or the inside using that centre midfielder as the fake pass. Secondly, if the fullback keeps the distance, then go back foot on 1v1, or thirdly, if the opponent presses at speed, then play 2v1 with a centre midfielder. So the key here, feed the fullback with lots of different passes and have the opponent change the angle and speed in how they press. The fullback's then got to make the decisions entirely based on these variables, same as a game. So if they cut the line off, then drive inside. If they press from the inside, then drive the outside. Or if they come straight on at speed, then bounce the centre midfielder. Now, another technical requirement lies in the crossing techniques, but this is broken down in depth in our winger profile. But for profiles like Trippier and Trent, they're up to treble figure crosses in the Premier League, so it's a vital technical requirement that fullbacks have to work on consistently. Now, in terms of the defensive side then, fullbacks are the players who face the most dribbles each game. So last season, Trippier faced 89 1v1 moments with Trent on 79. But when you look at many 1v1 sessions, they're very frequently in tight spaces, and these aren't real to the game. Because when a winger receives, firstly the fullback has large spaces to negotiate, and the isolated 1v1 moment I personally argue is the most important quality a fullback can have. Reason being, the phrase "make sure your strengths get you in the team and your weaknesses don't get you out of it" highlights it the best. So on this point, a fullback can be 10 out of 10 going forward. But if the 1v1 defending isn't of a certain level, then they'll quickly find themselves out of the team. Now, there's hundreds of great 1v1 exercises out there, but it's the principles that are the most important. So body position to get low so you can pivot, footwork patterns of short steps, twisting of the hips for agility, and then the mental attributes of the absolute determination of not being beaten or allowing your opponent to deliver. So there are your principles both in and out of possession for fullbacks. And like I always say to players, focus on your strengths and make them your 10 out of 10 whilst making sure to brush up on those weaknesses so they don't stand out. For more videos, webinars and sessions, please visit www.trainingspecific.com.